How's everyone doing out there? Welcome to a Word Hole Media presentation of Major League A-Holes in the Hole and Sox Tap Thing. I'm Pete.
I'm Ryan. You are in the hole with Major League A-Holes on March 13th. It's 313 Day, which is Detroit's area code.
Boy.
It's celebrated throughout Metro Detroit and Michigan. So we're going to start out the show with some Tigers news as their number one pitching prospect, Jackson Jobe, made his Major League Spring Training debut yesterday. I'll break that down for everybody. We have huge White Sox Dylan Cease trade rumors emerging.
It's
maybe
rampant.
As we speak. Keep your watch there buzzing. Let us know if anything happens this morning with that.
Got it right here, folks.
With that deal. Yeah. I've got a little bit of Cubs news to talk about. Of course, we haven't had much injury news this spring so far, but Jameson Taillon went down with a back injury. Also, Pete Crow Armstrong, top prospect, has already been demoted to the minors this year. He will not be with the big club on opening day. So, yeah, we'll talk about that. Your Giants made a little bit of news. I think that may or may not lead to a debate on our asshole of the week. That could be an interesting conversation. And, I mean, every week could be the A's brass could be considered assholes of the week, as David Kaval, president, as well as the owner, John Fisher, but they're in the headlines this week once again for just being jackasses. It's pretty hilarious. So I'll break all that down, but I think we might as well go ahead and jump into the news.
Tiger time.
Yeah, it's been a while since we started out a show about the Tigers, but I figured we might as well change things up. It's just we're in the spring, figuring things out. We're actually recording here on a Wednesday morning. It's kind of crazy. We haven't done a daytime podcast in months, maybe years, maybe since the pandemic. Back in the good old days of the pandemic when we had working from home and getting shit done. So yesterday, I was able to witness the debut of Tigers' top prospect, Jackson Jobe, the top pitching prospect, number 25 prospect in all of baseball, made his Major League Spring Training debut. It was with much fanfare. It was promoted very well throughout Michigan, so I knew all about it. I knew he wasn't going to be starting. Kenta Maeda was actually the starting pitcher that day. I thought they'd bring him in after Maeda's 3 or 4 innings, whatever he's ramping up to, but ended up not being until the 9th inning. AJ Hinch built up the suspense as much as he possibly could, finally bringing in Jackson Jobe in the 9th inning when the Tigers had a 1-0 lead. So they're actually in a save situation, pretty high leverage, as high leverage as spring training games get. I have never seen Jackson Jobe pitch. I've heard about him. He was drafted in 2019 by Al Avila, and I was looking back in our archives. I called Al Avila crafty for drafting the high school pitcher. I think he was 17, maybe 18 at the time, but definitely one of the top. He was the top high school pitching prospect in the draft that year. I was a little nervous about that, but he also drafted Ty Madden in that draft. So those are 2 top 10 picks. That's why I was applauding Al Avila for getting that done. Little did I know, very few other things would work out for Al, but Jobe was an imposing figure on the mound. He's 6'2", 190 pounds, looked 100% ready to pitch. He did not look overwhelmed by the moment at all. The only issues were his first 2 pitches were balls, so I thought maybe he's a little bit too amped up maybe, because he was throwing over 100 miles an hour already. He settled down and got a ground out for his first major league out. After that, he topped out at 102 miles an hour. He had coupled that with an 85 mile an hour changeup. That's his part of it. Those are the highlights of his 4-pitch repertoire. Got 2 strikeouts. It was electric. I mean, as excited as I've been for a 1 inning of a spring training game in a while. Of course, I'm looking for anything to be excited about my teams in March, so that it was just a fun moment. But you look at Jobe's, look at his minor league stats from 2023. He got up to AA, and in 64 innings, he had 84 strikeouts and only 6 walks. And that is all you can ask for out of a 21-year-old pitching prospect at this time. Don't walk people, but if you're striking out way more than 1 an inning, you're in good shape there. So he looked every bit the part of a top pitching prospect. It was fun to watch. He is not breaking camp with the Major League club for opening day. AJ Hinch announced that, I think, before spring training even started. So there was no real question that he'd be in the rotation possibly. I think within a couple months, I think maybe by May, June, we might actually see Jackson Jobe in the majors. Depending on how the rotation fleshes out, how hopefully no injuries, of course. As a Tigers fan, we have seen so many pitching injuries with our young pitchers over the years, so I'm always a bit gun shy. I was actually not real ecstatic seeing him throw 102 miles an hour in his first appearance, because I'm just worried about shit happening. He hasn't had many injury issues in his career, so it's a little bit, maybe I'm just a bit too nervous about shit like that. But depending on how other pitchers come back after injuries from last year, we'll see how the rotation fleshes out. Right now, it's Tarik Skubal as our ace. He's potentially a Cy Young candidate. If you take a look at what he did in the second half of 2023, he's right there after he came back from elbow surgery, I believe. But after that, we've got Kenta Maeda, who's a crafty vet. I did like that move by Scott Harris in the offseason, picking him up from division rival Minnesota. Jack Flaherty's going to pencil in at number 3. I think similar to like Michael Lorenzen last season, he's told people that he wanted to come to Detroit because he thought Detroit could make him better. And that's the Chris Fetter effect that we've talked about for years now, the pitching coach for the Tigers, that they know what they're doing over there, and they've been able to get the most out of young pitchers and reclaim pitchers like Michael Lorenzen last year that really had one of his best seasons. I think Jack Flaherty's looking to have similar results. So he had a fantastic 2018. Is it 2019? I forget. We talked about this a couple episodes ago, but he's been kind of steadily declining since then. So that's kind of a wishful approach that the Tigers can find something, but they've done it before. So if he can reclaim some of the magic he's had before, he'd be a very nice number 3 starter. After that, it looks like Matt Manning's going to be the number 4, which Manning was great last year until he got hurt twice on 2 bizarre comebackers that broke his foot twice in a row. He was out for a period of months after being hit in the foot with a line drive. Came back. I forget how many starts it was, but it was very few. And he got hit by the second hardest hit ball in MLB. Happened to go right at his foot again. And so just a lot of bad luck for Matt Manning. But when he's healthy, he's more than serviceable as a number 4 starter. So I like that. After that, we've got a battle between Casey Mize and Reese Olson, which it looks like Mize might take that number 5 role, which would be pretty impressive after he has not pitched in 2 years after major back injuries and elbow injuries. So I'd be happy with Reese Olson also, who really came on the scene last year and looked very solid. So that for number 5 would be great. But I'm nervous about Mize just because of the injury history, of course. He's bigger. He's gained like 20 pounds of muscle since we last saw him pitch, which that also makes me nervous because so many times you see players bulk up in the off season. They pull a oblique or something. I'm kind of waiting for that to happen. Plus, with his injury history, not real sure. But the good news is that the Tigers have lots of young depth that if they do suffer some injuries, they can call upon that. And again, this is all working within the AL Central, which is easily the worst division in baseball the last several years. So their rotation doesn't necessarily have to match up with the best in all Major League Baseball. It just has to match up against their division. And I think it measures up pretty favorably. So we'll get into our Nostradamus annual prediction show probably in next week or 2 weeks from now before the season starts. We'll talk about how I think the Tigers will match up in that AL Central. The rotation is looking kind of where I was hoping it would look at this point in the spring. So I'm getting fired up.
All right.
You getting fired up over there during spring training so far, or how are you feeling these days in this sunny Wednesday morning in March?
I'm
Not quite as fired up as I am, apparently.
no, not really.
All right. Let's pick it up here. We're trying to entertain the
Not
people.
not really sure how either of my teams are gonna truly shake out. Little more optimism for the Giants. Because no matter how good the
We'll get
Dodgers
to them.
are, they always find a way to screw shit up. But the White Sox are interesting ball club, and like what you've done the past few weeks, Smitty. I've got 5 storylines, or maybe more like 5 questions that I've drummed up that I think are interesting things, storylines for the White Sox this year. And I was going to originally go with least interesting to most interesting or most compelling, but
let's start with the most.
Due to breaking news that's happening around baseball in the last 24 hours, we're going to start with what is by far the most interesting and compelling storyline for the White Sox, and was and remains from the offseason, is what will come first, a Dylan Cease trade or an approval of a new stadium? And it's looking like Dylan Cease trade is going to run away with this one, as in the last 24 hours, due to what looks to be a possible season-ending injury to Garrett Cole in New York, and what is a Rangers starting rotation that is in really bad shape until middle part of the season after the All-Star break, where some members will be returning back to injury, that Dylan Cease looks like he's going to be traded possibly today, but I would assume by this weekend, before he has a chance to start again. He did the White Sox a shit ton of favors last night. He struck out 8 batters and 12 faced in 3 1/3 innings. So
nice.
Very dominating outing. He's had a dominating spring. Not that means it's gonna anything when you go into the regular season, but when you look at him, he looks so far to be a lot more like the Dylan Cease we have come to love from the 2022 season. So
we need to back up a little bit here about these trade rumors, because according to a text I received yesterday morning, Dylan Cease had already been traded to the New York Yankees.
Oh, yeah, true.
Out of the blue, my phone blew up with a text from Peter M. Vanieri over there. That was three words with an exclamation point. Cease to Yankees.
Well, I mean, I've got a little excited.
I don't know how else to interpret that other than it was an actual done deal. Maybe this is my own fault, but usually when I get a text from you out of the blue, there is some huge breaking news. So I'm wondering the genesis of that text. Did you believe that the trade was already done, or were you just saying it looked like it was very close? Like, what was your thought process when you sent me that text?
So there were two things that came across my alerts. One was a CBS Sports alert that was basically alluded to Yankees aggressively pursue Cease with Garrett Cole news. And then this is where I should have paused.
Okay.
Good old Bob Nightingale.
Oh no! Bob
reported.
Got you again.
Bob is the one who really broke the story that CBS picked up. I didn't know the 6 degrees of separation on that. The part of the story that was originally left out, though, was the fact that the Sox have, and I don't know if this is the make and break for it, they have been basically saying, if you don't put Spencer Jones, one of the top-rated Yankees outfield prospects, I think he's their
number one.
Yeah, and he's like, Baseball America has him at 46 on the top 100, Major League Baseball 84, Baseball Prospectus 33. So he's a decent enough player. So
that seems reasonable. Actually, now that you read those numbers off, that seems reasonable. Like maybe a starting point for a deal for Cease,
But apparently, this is again according to Nightingale, Jones was not included in the latest offer, which has been part of the sticking point. So
I would say that's the whole sticking point. So that makes sense. But I don't know. I just had to call you out for that.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine. I guess I should have been comma maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Did you mean to mislead me?
I was maybe in a little bit, having a little bit of fun there.
Well, I did jump on social media immediately and figured it out. This is like the news. That news had come out maybe an hour before I looked at social media, and then all I saw were the reports that there were rumors. But like you said, there are more rumors beyond just the Yankees right now, as contending clubs are looking to bolster their rotation as we get deeper in the spring. You mentioned the Rangers, but I've also seen, I think it was Ken Rosenthal talked about the Padres being interested as well. So all of that bodes well for your White Sox if there potentially is a bidding war for Cease at this point, as injuries and such make contending teams a little more desperate to get the services of. I mean, he would be the best young pitcher available, under control for 2 years at this point. So buckle up. Yeah, you've got your phone there, or you got your watch there that alerts you. So maybe during the show, you might be breaking some news.
Yeah. And the other part of the story, I don't know if you heard this part, and you already mentioned them on the show today, but Rosenthal also reported that the White Sox are talking to Michael Lorenzen as a replacement for Dylan Cease. So like the fact that they're already out there looking to backfill, I mean, it seems like it's close. The Rangers package is apparently it's Porter, the number 5 prospect, Duran. He's 7. He's like a utility player.
Okay, yeah, I think I saw him.
Yeah, he's 24, 768 OPS. He's played 6 different positions so far. And then it was Leiter, who hasn't really panned out from the Rangers' point of view, according to the Athletic article. Hasn't met his expectations as the 2nd overall pick in the 2021 draft. And he's ranked as the number 14 prospect. So it seems like a decent package from the Rangers, which may be closer than what the Yankees are willing to offer. But you wonder if the Yankees name being out there now that they have re-engaged with the White Sox has sped everything up for everyone, thinking that the Yankees have the means to make it happen with their farm system too. Padres,
well, and they have the motivation.
Yeah.
What are they, 82 and 80 last year, which is not where the Yankees need to be with their ace now potentially on the shelf.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the latest. I know he's going to get an MRI on his elbow, but my God, that's as ominous as it gets. So maybe more is coming out today about how dire that is. But if you already hear about the Yankees talking trades, it's got to be pretty serious.
So the rumor that came out like last night, I got an alert, was that they got bad news and he was going for a 2nd and 3rd opinion.
Oh, wow. So, okay. So he's had the MRI and now, boy.
So I think for my first question for the White Sox, I think the Dylan Cease trade is going to beat out Jerry World, happening or not happening, the new stadium for the White Sox. So I know it's taking a little bit longer than I thought, but I knew putting this bobblehead up, since everyone else has been traded off the team, would help move this forward. For those of you listening on a podcast, I was holding up my Dylan Cease bobblehead.
Yeah, and several episodes ago, we did a whole segment about how you were willing that trade into existence, and part of your voodoo magic that was going to make that come to fruition was your bobblehead, Dylan Cease bobblehead, sitting there. So
you're making it.
You might have more power than we think.
That's right. Watch out, everyone. Number 2, you may not see this one coming, and I know it seems probably unlikely with his Kansas City ties, but will Pedro Grifol make it out of this season?
Oh, wow.
And while I know Chris Getz, and the KC Royal bloodline, the feeder for the White Sox organization currently, you can get your Shy Royals t-shirt at aesthetics.com.
Hold on. First of all, it's Chicago Oils.
Excuse me, Chicago Oils, yeah.
And it's at at aesthetics.shop. ASSTHETICS.shop.
See, that's why he's here.
Yeah,
I can't remember these things.
Yeah, we actually sold a t-shirt this week. So yeah.
Nice.
Nice work over there by you.
Yeah. Oh, did Dave buy one?
Oh yeah, it came right through. After you sent me the text, we've had a merchandise request, and I made that graphic I made several weeks ago into a t-shirt and put it on the site. I don't know why I hadn't done that before, but yeah, it was sold in like a half hour. So
sweet.
Yeah. It's a little behind the scenes business transaction for you folks out there, but yeah, the little business we do will let you know every time probably.
So let's level set this. That Grifol was Han's pick, part of the Han Kenny regime. Doesn't mean Chris Getz necessarily wanted him. I also am fine with him staying on this season. See what is going to happen with this interesting compiled roster that Chris Getz has put together, and we'll talk about that a little more in question number 3. But I honestly believe that if the season goes as bad as the experts are predicting, around 60 to 65 wins, depending on who you look at, I don't know that he'll I shouldn't say make it out of the season. Will he make it back next season? I don't think so. I think he's done. I know no one's anticipating that, but I think that's part of the phase 2 of the fresh start initiative with the White Sox, because Grifol does a lot of talking, but he did a great press conference last year, which most managers give, and new GMs, they say what the fans want to hear. But the team that we saw on the field last year was nowhere near what he promised. I mean, porous defense as always, and I realize he's trying to undo, a couple years of La Russa. So that's why I'm not like mad that he's back again this season. But I feel like if he doesn't produce this season, he's probably going to be out, because it's just a lot of noise. It's a lot of hot air. And I don't see him being, unless they overachieve, that he's going to be back. So I think we will see a change in managers yet again for the White Sox, with if the White Sox live up to experts' expectations of them this year. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but.
Well, did you have some quotes from Pedro? Was that where we were going with this?
I
thought he said.
I have. We had Grifoli's last year. I don't know. I feel like these are going to be.
I love that.
I feel like he's going to have these gems all year, because he says shit and you're like, what? So
a lot of people refer to it as word salad, just putting a bunch of words together. But yeah, I like your coining of the phrase Grifoli's to explain Pedro Grifol's whatever he does end up saying to the public every so often.
So it's funny. We're gonna bring up the word bunt again, and we were talking bunts last week and how that related to David Ross, and you were happy that the bunt was going to be off the table for the Cubs this year.
Craig Counsell does not prefer giving up outs the way that David Ross did routinely, so I enjoy that as well.
Well, I can't say the same for Pedro Grifol, because Moncada has expressed his interest. I don't know if you had heard this about hitting number 2 this year, and
oh yes, I did hear about this.
And Grifol responded, and this is Grifol quoting Grifol quote after Moncada had a bunt single in a game. When was the last time you saw that? He wants to hit in the 2-hole, right? There's your motivation right there. A pretty damn good 2-hole hitter if he puts his mind to it, which we're going to make sure his mind is right.
So he wants his number 2 hitter to lay down bunts.
Yes. This is
what year is this? 1986.
A number 2 hitter with projected like 25 home run power, a gap hitter. Yeah. He has unbelievable power when he connects. I mean, a guy who could easily drive in your leadoff hitter and with one swing of the bat if the leadoff hitter's on base.
And that's the thing. Like, yes, actually, he makes perfect sense in the number 2 role. You want your best hitters, or whoever happens, or whatever Moncada we get could easily project to be one of your best hitters. You want him to slug. You don't want him to be bunting. So the example that Grifol is using is very poor, but the idea of batting him number 2 is solid. So there's a disconnect there someplace. But
yes, he's apparently going to have to give himself up and generate an easy out if Benintendi's on first. Yeah. I'm terrified. Next quote is after the Sox. This is a familiar storyline with the White Sox. They were 3 for 20 with runners in scoring position after a particular game. From my view, we have to start putting the pedal to the metal here when it comes to knowing how to win baseball games and knowing how to put baseball games away. For my eyes, we have to address this thing. What?
Okay.
I mean,
preseason game, he's worried about hitters with runners in scoring position. Yes, that's something he needs to always be concerned about. I feel like in these interviews, though, he just feels like he needs to say things. He kind of throws out platitudes and stuff, and he still sounds like a young manager trying to find his way on how to navigate media exchanges. So I don't know.
I just feel like he never actually says anything. It's
that's the definition of word salad, and maybe the definition of Grifoli.
Yeah, it's kind of like watching a Matt Eberflus post-game press conference. They never
Matt Nagy before him.
Yeah, they never really say anything.
We've talked way too much Bears over the last couple of podcasts.
Well, I mean,
no more Bears. Fuck that.
Yeah, fuck the Bears. Number 3, did Chris Getz actually assemble a more competitive roster than people think? Now, again,
I've been noodling around with that idea too. I didn't want to give you any hints that I might be thinking that, but I've thought about that. Maybe are we piling on the White Sox a little bit too much?
Yeah, I think they're going to be better than predicted. I
think you're right, actually.
And there's some, again, it's spring training, but there's some spring training trends, like their pitching staff is 5th in strikeouts with 178. I think the Tigers are 1st or 2nd. But just putting that in perspective, because we talk about the Tigers pitching staff, arguably one of the best pitching staffs, probably the best pitching staff in the AL Central, really, if they stay healthy. But
yeah, it's not tough competition there. But yeah, I think there's potential.
Yeah. But like Fadid and Soraka, and I'm removing Cease from this conversation, by the way. Fadid and Soraka have a 3.60 ERA right now.
Oh no, we're doing this.
Well, just some things to look at for just like storylines, like right. Chad Cole is 3.86. Garrett Crochet has yet to let up a run. Will he be in the starting rotation or not? Bailey Horn, who they recently acquired from the Cubs, who's slated as a starter, as a 1.8 ERA. But then you got question marks like fucking Kopech still looks like a mess. His ERA is 7.71, and Tuki Toussaint, who they're probably just going to end up cutting, has a 59 ERA. So it's not all cupcakes and rainbows, but there are like the one stat that stands out to me the most is that they're 5th with strikeouts. And usually when you have that ability on your pitching staff to strike out batters at that high of a rate, you usually end up with some pretty decent results overall. So I
mean, of course, you take all spring training.
Yeah,
stats
right, exactly.
With a grain of salt, but I think the other thing to think about is, like we said, we've been piling on the White Sox for years, and it reached its lowest point last year. I think everything that could go wrong went wrong for the Sox. So maybe just the law of averages states they can't be nearly as bad as they were last year. That I mean, that's a kind of a ridiculous way to have optimism, I guess, but it can't be any worse. But I think that there's a potential there that it's so easy to rip on the White Sox and the media and us and everybody. It's what they've done is less than inspiring in this first offseason under Chris Getz, as the royalization of the organization continues. But maybe we need to step back a little bit and see what's actually happening instead of just assuming every move they've made is going to be a failure.
Right.
Maybe the players on the roster start to get back towards what's on the back of their baseball card, the positive regression potentially. So I think other than spring training stats, I think there's reason to think about everyone's perception of the White Sox and how that might be overruling a potential better reality that might exist.
Yeah, I'm not proclaiming playoffs here, but I think they'll
me neither.
More watchable and enjoyable than last season's team. And I'm very confident that defensively it won't be as much of an abomination as it's been. And that alone will keep the pace of the game up. And I think someone had quipped earlier in the season, did the Sox put together a defensively strong and offensively weak team just so the games don't last that long this season? So
that's a good one.
Yeah. So that could be the case, but we'll have to spend a couple hours watching this disaster. But I do think they'll be closer to like a mid-70s type of win season, maybe low 80s.
Yeah. We'll get into our Nostradamus predictions in a couple weeks, but I'm curious where you're going to land on that when we get to that show.
So what will greatly affect the White Sox and how they go is number 4 and 5 here. And number 4 is Will Moncada suddenly live up to the hype in a very convenient contract year. And what I'm going to go
high
with
potential for that.
What I'm going with is yes, because he's going to. This is what we're going to learn about Yoan Moncada this year. That what you had said, what you had preached about Han in these contracts is going to come to fruition in that when money is on the line, he is suddenly going to become the player we want him to be and have heard about he could be. Because there's a lot on the line here. He's not looking at anywhere near the money he's getting this year if he doesn't perform to the back of that baseball card. And even if he does, it's questionable if he'll get anything. He'll probably get within the ballpark, but like there is so much on the line for him this year that I think he's going to push himself in ways he's never pushed himself before.
I'd be shocked if he got a deal coming out of this season that approaches $24 million a year that he'll be receiving this season. You were referencing my diatribes for years against Rick Hahn for signing young players to long extensions, which is actually, Rick Hahn was kind of ahead of the curve because you're seeing that a lot more. The Braves are more famous for that than anyone, but my Tigers even jumped in on that with the Colt Keith deal. Unfortunately for Rick Hahn, he chose the wrong players to extend young in their career. And I think it's pretty obvious what happened with Moncada, as we've seen. He's very comfortable with his multi-million-dollar contract, making 24 this year. I don't know what he's made over that time, but motivation, it's, that's really hard to question someone's motivation, but it just seems obvious when you see him play that the motivation isn't there. The other example I cite is when we did see him in the World Baseball Classic, when he was playing for his home country, he looked like the best player in the world for a period of a couple of weeks. So that potential is there. We just rarely see it out of him. So motivation feels like a money motivation or patriotism seem to be strong motivators for him. And with that carrot out there, as his contract is ending after the season, seems likely he could find that motivation. We've heard about injuries a lot with him, and it takes him a long time to come back from things, or he's dealing with stuff, playing through it, which is admirable. But again, how much of that do we know is him? His motivation is willingness to fight through injuries, or are those excuses potentially? So I don't know. This is it. This is the year we find out who is the real Moncada. Is he injury prone? Is he, will he live up to the number one prospect ratings he had at one point? Can he be that best player on your roster? And he's got all the reasons to do it this season. I mean, I don't even, how old is he still? Is he like even 27? I mean, he's got to be entering the prime.
Like 28 or 29, I think.
Yeah, this is where he's entered. This is the big deal that he could be getting on top of the big deal he's already received. This is everything
Yeah,
for the
he's
rest of his
28.
career. Okay, yeah, he's in the wheelhouse. So if he has that season, this is where the big money comes. I'd be shocked though if he gets considering the landscape we saw this past off season,
Oh God,
with how
yeah.
free agents worked, how that would work. I think he's destined for a pillow deal, much like the 3-year Bellinger and Chapman deals we just saw, where there's maybe opt outs, but to keep that carrot out there for him. I don't think anyone would want to sign him to a long term deal, considering what we've seen him do on a long term deal early in his career. So yeah, somehow I doubt it's going to be approaching the $24 million, but
Yeah.
that's a huge. Again, that changes your lineup dramatically if you've got a dangerous Yoan Moncada. So that's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I mean, because you look, it would be Moncada at 2, Robert at 3, Jimenez at 4. I mean,
That could be
that
terrifying. We've
that
always thought that was going to be terrifying. Yeah,
it
it
sounds
hasn't really come
terrifying
through.
from a video game
Yes.
standpoint. From MLB The Show
Yes.
24, it's terrifying. From
Yeah.
reality, it isn't. And that brings me to my final storyline. Will Eloy stay off the IR? And I'm going to go with no. He will not.
Yeah.
And the sad thing about it is Eloy's numbers are solid. Like Moncada's numbers are iffy. Like they're up and down and all over the place, healthy or not healthy. I mean, really, Moncada's best season was the year before he got the big contract. So there you go. When Eloy's on the field, he will do whatever it takes. He will hit to the right side to drive in the run and not just look to like drive the ball out of the park. He's a very smart hitter with his approach. His numbers are incredible, but he cannot stay on the field. And I don't know why this year, I have no reason to believe this year will be any different than years prior, which will be part of the reason the Sox don't have as much success as they could have, because they're kind of like this team offensively that if you can't keep the starters on the field, then at least the core group of guys of like him and Robert, who basically has avoided injury, Moncada, and we'll see what Vaughn does this year, but like those guys need to be out there because they're the pop in the lineup. The rest of the lineup are fast, speedier, just on base guys, not OPS guys, but just on base guys. So and that's even questionable because like I think Paul DeYoung hit like fucking 220 last year or something. Who knows? But like I just, I don't have a lot of faith that, unfortunately, that Eloy will be on the field for more than maybe like 110 games this year, and that's just not going to get it done.
I think that'd be pretty good if you can pencil him as 110. That'd be more than usual. I haven't looked up at how many games he's played in the last 5 years, but it's not much more than that. So
I remember that crazy stat. Wasn't that like the core roster? Didn't they only play something like a dozen games together? Like
yeah, we did a whole segment about that. I don't remember now, but yeah, it was crazy how few games. It was like 12. Yeah, I think like 12 games they played together
over like a 4-year span. That's
fucked up. How they were all in the lineup on the same day.
Yeah, that's
crazy.
Up, so, well, that will bring the White Sox conversation to a close. Still no news on Dylan Cease at this point, so nothing to report.
Keep me posted. You can break into my diatribes here if you need to.
All right.
Well, that moves us to the other side of Chicago with my Chicago Cubs. Unfortunately, suffering injury woes. Fortunately, just one at this point that is significant. Jameson Taillon with a lower back injury that is putting his opening day in question if he'll be available. That does not sound terrible, but when you look at their rotation and how I just have felt from day one that there's just not enough depth there, that even this injury potential is terrifying to what that could do to the Cubs rotation. You've got Justin Steele, of course, is your ace. He had 9 strikeouts last night compared to Dylan Cease's 8. I want to throw that out there. But I'm not worried about Justin Steele as much. After that, it's all question marks. What is Kyle Hendricks going to be as he's entering the twilight of his career? He's really the number 2 starter in this rotation at this point, which I'd be far more comfortable with him as a 3 or 4. Really, a 4 is where he should be.
Right.
You've got Shota Imanaga penciled in at number 3. He could be a number 2. I don't know. He could be a number 5. He might be out of the majors if he can't figure out how to keep fly balls from flying out of Wrigley Field. That's a huge question mark that I brought up in the last show during my storyline, 5 storylines going into 2024 that was much maligned.
Very popular segment.
Yeah. So far, not so much, but Taillon was going to be the number 4 starter, which doesn't sound as devastating. If your number 4 starter has issues, you should be able to get somebody in there. But again, the rotation depth is just not there, and I'm surprised that the Cubs would even be interested in somebody like Michael Lorenzen that you were talking about potentially going to the White Sox. And we might hear more about that in coming weeks. I've just heard that opening day is him being available is in question. I haven't heard he's not going to be available or he's out for the season or anything like that, but lower back injury is not great. He wasn't even that great last year. So he dealt with a lot of injuries last year. So this is just a continuation of that.
You there?
After that, it's kind of a mix of several ideas that could fill in the back of the rotation, with Drew Smyly being the most likely to fill in the end of the rotation. You've got Javier Assad. I've seen that name thrown out there. I think he's a reliever. I don't think I'd want him in the rotation. Hayden Wesneski, who I was all about last spring, I think you remember.
Yes.
He did not come to fruition the way I thought he would the 2023 season, but potentially I was just a year too early on the Wesnasty. Then you've got Jordan Wicks, who's that potential is there as well, but we haven't seen him in the rotation. So I'm still shocked that the Cubs didn't do more to bolster the rotation depth, and we're starting to see cracks in that already. And we're 2 weeks away from the season even starting.
You think any chance? I mean, it's definitely a way greater upgrade, but do you think there's any chance they go after a Snell or Montgomery now? I mean,
I don't see why not. Why wouldn't they? Or why wouldn't they be in the mix for those guys? I'd far prefer Montgomery. Snell, I think he wants to be on the West Coast. We've talked about
we talked about that. Yeah.
Snell makes me nervous because he doesn't get through 6 innings, even though he puts up Cy Young Award numbers with strikeouts and stuff. He doesn't pitch deep into games. So, but why aren't the Cubs being mentioned in these same conversations we've had about free agent pitchers out there? Or we've talked about it many times. The topic du jour is always, why don't the Cubs just trade for Dylan Cease and to get him back in the organization, which would be delicious for talk show radios and podcasters to talk about forever. But you don't hear anything about that. I think it would make perfect sense at this point, actually. But the depth of the Cubs farm system could help the White Sox, and Dylan Cease in the rotation for the next 2 years would certainly help the Cubs. But
is it just not?
Doesn't appear to be out there.
Yeah. Is it just did they call and was Guts just no? I mean, it would seem stupid.
Yeah, I don't know.
It would be it would seem stupid and petty, but
I think it'd be irresponsible if Getz and Jed Hoyer simply would not trade with each other because they're in the same city and the history and the baggage. I think they'd be derelict in their duties if they felt that way.
100%.
You need to explore every opportunity that makes your organization better, no matter who it is. So I don't believe that's out there. That's any real reason why we're not hearing those conversations. I think Jed Hoyer's just happy with his rotation depth, and that might speak to, he obviously knows way more about the young pitchers coming through the system, and he might feel he's got plenty there. And I'm just
he knows more than
nervous
us.
about this. Just as everyone that's nervous about this out there, just we don't know what we're talking about, which is very possible, but it doesn't look right to me.
I don't believe it. No one is smarter than you and I.
Well, I know we've been doing this for 5 years. We should know it all. But
I know we should be running a major league ball club. like co-GMs
I'm
or
going to be
something.
nominating you to be the next commissioner of baseball. So I don't want you to.
Yes.
I don't want you to pigeonhole yourself as, just a mere GM for one single franchise. I think you need to be the next commissioner of baseball after Rob Manfred retires after the 2028 season.
The
So
first thing I'm going to do is push the games back so they're 3.5 hours long and get all this.
Oh yeah,
all this new blood out of here. We want real baseball.
Sell more
fans.
beer that way.
We're going to bring pitchers back hitting. We're going to take it back old school. We're going to turn back the clock.
I think we've got some time to develop your platform here for your election. So
it doesn't sound like I'm going to win based on my current platform.
I think you've got a shot. Can't be any worse than Rob Manfred.
More money for the owners? You're voted in.
Well, that'll get you elected for sure.
Yeah.
But the next, not sad story, but just kind of a downer a bit in Cubs camp this week was the announcement that Pete Crow Armstrong will not be breaking camp with the opening day roster. He will be in the minor leagues at AAA Iowa. Not too surprising. I think the writing was on the wall the moment Cody Bellinger was signed. Although you could argue it would have been a battle between either first baseman Michael Busch or Pete Crow Armstrong would be sent down, as Bellinger can fulfill both the first base and center field roles. It became pretty clear that PCA was going to be the one set down because every time we've seen him, he's failed essentially. I mean, that is a tiny sample size that is unfair to put upon the 21-year-old, but he didn't look good this spring. He didn't look good at the plate. He looked terrible at the plate in the short sample we saw in September of 2023 at the major league level. I don't even think I think he was 0 for 14, which again, you don't want to judge too much, but he's also touted as being, the best outfield prospect in years. And just last week he had 2 errors in the field. And it's just like, I feel like he's trying way too hard. That's the only explanation, because if you look at his numbers in the minors and between AA and AAA last season in 107 games, he had 876 OPS that included 20 home runs and threw on 37 steals on top of that. And he is a tremendous fielder when you see the highlights. He's got the instincts, but something has happened to him when he's either at Wrigley Field or at Major League spring training camp, where I think he's getting way too hyped or just overwhelmed at this point, which is fine. He's only 21 years old. He does not need to be there. And that's why, it was a solid signing for the Cubs to get Cody Bellinger back, because now they don't have to rely on a 21-year-old that may not be ready. So it's frustrating because we've heard his name for so long and we get impatient. All fans do and podcasters do. So it'd be great if he was flourishing already this spring and ready to break camp with the opening day roster, but it hasn't happened. I mean, what has happened is he showed up with blue hair, which was hilarious.
Great look.
Maybe that's a sign of immaturity. I don't know. It's just fucking blue hair. Who cares?
Kind of Javi Baez.
Kind of made it. Well, yeah, but Javi Baez had established himself at that point. The goofy hair and stuff. We knew who Javi Baez was, although maybe he needs to dye his hair at this point to change things up with the Tigers. But I don't want to just say he's immature. The blue hair is not that big a deal, but he's kind of a goofy looking dude. If you've seen pictures of him, he's a ginger all through and through. So dyeing his hair blue, maybe trying to distract from that. I don't know. Give him time. It's Cubs aren't reeling from that just because of the Bellinger presence. So I'm not too worried. But just I'm really curious to see how he builds on his minor league career that we've seen. 876 OPS is rather impressive when you consider how young he is, and he was doing that at AA and AAA last year. I think he's going to rake again. We haven't seen anything that shows anything that he won't be able to do that at the minor league level. It's just, when can he put it all together when he actually gets called up? Can he compartmentalize? Can he calm himself? Whatever the issues are, we need to see a little more out of him when he gets on the big stage. I think that is it for my Cubs. I think we can transition potentially over to an asshole of the week.
Yeah.
When we start,
go ahead.
Well, when we start talking about your Giants here, there's interesting. You and I might have an interesting conversation. I think we don't. usually we have a pretty simple asshole of the week that is non-negotiable. It's pretty obvious why we would be on one side or the other. But you and I think, are going to debate this week who the asshole of the week is when it comes to your San Francisco Giants.
Yeah, the big story here this week is J.D. Davis, in the shadow of the signing of Matt Chapman, was released by the Giants. At the surface,
that's not too surprising.
No,
as soon as you signed Chapman, you knew that Davis's time was probably up. But
the surprising part of it is he won. The Giants and Davis could not come to terms on a contract, so they went to arbitration, and Davis won his arbitration hearing, getting $6.9 million. However, due to the current CBA, there's a loophole that exists that if you're terminated within 30 days of, or if you're terminated before the start of the season in the arbitration agreement, you're only due a month's worth of pay. 30 days of pay.
Service time, I think.
Yeah, which is $1.1 million, which is not necessarily, I'll take $1.1 million.
Yes, but when you woke up Monday morning thinking you had a job that was going to pay you $7 million, and which used to be guaranteed. I mean, that's how strong the MLB Players Association used to be. We'll get into that. That baseball contracts are guaranteed. Well, this is a loophole that circumvents that guarantee. So J.D. Davis woke up thinking he had $7 million coming to him, and he soon learned that he only had $1 million. So he got a $6 million haircut, which that'd be tough to swallow at any income level. So that loophole exists in the hastily agreed upon CBA as the season was fast approaching last spring. Thrown together, it seems like Tony Clark may have missed this detail, as we have not heard. No one has even heard of this loophole, or it certainly hasn't been exploited until now. So I'm curious how that came about, how much the Giants knew, if the Players Association even knew about this or understood how this loophole could be exploited.
Yeah, that part of the story isn't exactly clear.
Yeah.
Zaidi is not denying it, nor is he saying yes, but
Farhan Zaidi.
Yeah, but he did say, his quote is, "Everything we've done in this case is well within our rights as a team, and that's recognized. It's very cut and dried in the CBA."
I'm certainly not arguing with him about that. It is written that way. I don't think anyone understood it necessarily that way, how it could be applied, and how arbitration, essentially the agreed upon system of arbitration, could be circumvented by this one line of text in the CBA. I don't think he's certainly not wrong in that he's abiding by the rules of the CBA. I think the issue that Zaidi is going to run into is the reputation he's going to get by being the GM to first exploit that, to first fuck over a player as hard as he possibly could. Just because that mechanism is there for him to do doesn't mean he has to use it, and no one else has chosen to use it.
Well, that's not
true. The
fact
that this is over.
That's not true.
What's that?
So according to an online site called The Defector, this has been used by other teams, but it's nothing as large of a contract.
Okay.
As this.
Okay, I hadn't seen. So I had read that it had not been used, but yeah, I could see how either I misinterpreted that, or if it's been used but not nearly to this extent, or the monetary value, or the name value of the player.
Right, exactly. So, that's why it's not really been reported on, because
it's not a big deal.
It's not like someone was losing close to $6 million. They were
okay. Well, thank you for educating me on that.
Yeah. It is not the first time this has been utilized by teams.
I just would say Farhan has hurt his reputation, though, by using it to this extent over $6 million, which It's not a whole lot for the Giants necessarily to absorb. It's a bad look more than anything. I don't know that, if he had not done this, if he would just, how Giants fans would feel if they cut JD Davis and he got his $6.9 million. How that plays out. I just think it's the definition of an asshole move. I mean, that's why I'm going to nominate him for the asshole of the week. But I think you've got a different perspective, which I can appreciate.
I would say Tony Clark's the asshole. Why would you allow this even be written into the agreement, other than the idea of, I mean, this is a throwaway, this is never going to happen, thought, to at least to anyone who is of stature, mid-tier stature of JD Davis, because that's the thing. We're not even talking about I mean, you could really dick move someone who ended up with a $15 million or $18 million arbitration by cutting them and just paying them their 30 days of service.
You pay them 1 month out of that.
Yeah, out of that. So
I can't argue with that. I think that's a good point. Tony should have known. I think the explanation for that is he probably didn't even know about this, as that CBA was negotiated at the 11th hour. So many details were changing at the last minute. This is not an excuse, by the way. This adds to your argument that he's an asshole for not, if it's true that he didn't even know about this. It's a fleet of lawyers that were negotiating those small points at that point in the negotiation process. So he is responsible for that. But to have Tony Clark be, I don't know, he should be knowledgeable to every minor detail, but this is something that few saw coming or few thought would be an issue. But it is obviously a major issue now, and it's going to be yet another sticking point when we get to the new collective bargaining agreement negotiations, as our current one expires on December 1st, 2026.
Yeah, so we get another round of Manfred in the negotiations, which is not good.
No, that's awful. We have very, very few pieces are changing on that chessboard. What is changing is even more acrimony between the Players Association and the owners because of incidents like this. It just leads to more trouble between the two parties. There's no way that you could look at this and say, the players are going to feel good about this. Maybe they should have been more aware, but for the owners and specifically Farhan Zahidi sticking it to specifically JD Davis, it's a bad look, and it does not bode well for the argument that the owners have anything in their interest other than making more money.
But what's hilarious, what's hilarious about the loophole, I don't mean to interrupt you, is if JD Davis had taken the $6.55 million offer that the Giants made and it had not been ruled, if he had not won his arbitration hearing, if they had just come to an agreement, he would have gotten $6.55 million.
Yeah, and that's a really good point.
It's only when the team loses the arbitration hearing.
Yeah, when it's an agreed, or it's a number that the arbiter comes up with, not what they agree upon. So yes, you're right. And
so greed is not good in all cases.
That's a really good point to bring up, but you could also argue that the Giants always had this evil plan in mind and drove a really hard bargain on something that they thought JD wouldn't accept.
Well,
because they knew they had this in their back pocket, and I don't think he necessarily, or his agent necessarily, did.
I think you're being way too diabolical on this, because Matt Chapman got signed less than a week ago. So JD Davis was supposed to be the starting third baseman. So
that was their backup plan. But yes, if you've noticed on the 5 years we've been recording this and for the years we've been writing the blog, I am diabolical. I do not trust the owners. I don't think you do either. So
I don't trust the owners, but I don't think
I'm overboard, but yes.
I don't think the Giants were like, oh, we could totally fuck this dude over if we end up with a third baseman later. I mean, I don't think
it's like that. And I don't think it's like that. And I certainly don't think they speak in that dumb voice you always do.
Well, maybe they do.
I think they speak in a very well-toned voice, intelligent voice that figures out ways to make them money constantly. And it's just, again, it's just a bad look. It's not, I think we're probably stretching here to call either of these guys assholes of the week, but we haven't had assholes of the week in a while. So I thought it'd be a fun conversation at least.
Yeah. I mean, maybe
unless
it's not
you really
Tony
believe
Clark.
Tony Clark's an asshole.
Maybe it's the lawyers who represented Tony Clark in those negotiations. Someone's to blame outside of the Giants, because this isn't just this is the first time it's been put out public facing. This isn't the first time it's happened, and it's not going to be the last time it happens between now and 2026. So that's not on the Giants. That's on the people who negotiated the contract.
Yeah, that's fair. I think you could point to either of them and say, I mean, neither of them are necessarily wrong. I think they're just being assholes. So I think we can agree upon that.
I do. Like, J.D. Davis could have lost $400,000, but because he was greedy, he lost $6 million. Sorry, J.D. Wah, wah.
Because he works for an asshole. So I think we can end that conversation.
Everyone is an asshole in this situation. How about that? We got.
I like it.
First time we're going to asshole round tripper. It's the Giants and the CBA agreement by Tony Clark.
We strive for asshole equality. Strive for asshole equality on this podcast.
We'll just call it an asshole draw this week, and that's it.
The asshole draw. I like that. Well, speaking of assholes. Yeah, we could just move over to the other side of the Bay Area to my fucking A's. We could nominate David Kaval, president of the A's, or owner John Fisher for Asshole of the Week pretty much every week as news comes out. We have beaten the hell out of them with our segments about the new Las Vegas stadium renderings, the despicable ways they've conducted business and shit all over Oakland fans for years. And still expect them to buy tickets after raising season ticket prices last year. It's unbelievable what they've done. But sometimes I feel like, we're just a couple of goofball podcasters and kind of in an echo chamber where I'm on social media following A's fans groups, and just we're kind of all in agreement that the A's are the most evil organization, the most incompetent organization out there. And I feel like that's fun fodder for podcasters and bloggers and even on the radio and stuff. But we're starting to get some national coverage here, national media coverage that is kind of corroborating our feelings. As this week, there were a couple of articles that were written specifically about the A's Las Vegas stadium plan. Put that in quotes, whatever this plan is. Maury Brown from Forbes magazine. You've heard me mention his name over the years before. He's the business of baseball writer for Forbes. Really good follow on Twitter. Really good writer. But he's been covering baseball business for years. And he did an interview with David Kaval recently, who was on his propaganda tour to sell this new stadium to the citizens of Nevada. The article starts out with this paragraph. Oakland A's president David Kaval is trying to sell sand in the desert. The thing is, he's pushed relocation of the A's to Las Vegas so much, he's having delusions of grandeur. He goes on to basically compare him to a used car salesman. He used that term, which I thought was hilarious. And I think I'm going to use that for the graphic for this segment when we eventually post it on YouTube. He told Maury Brown, when he was writing it, he got the impression that Kaval may have thought that this was all like off the record, the way he was speaking to him about things, because it was so outlandish. But Kaval confirmed immediately that, oh, no, you should write an article about all this. He first compared the A's stadium in Las Vegas to being likened to Camden Yards in Baltimore. This is going to be the most important venue since Orioles Park at Camden Yards in Major League Baseball. To which Maury pointed out, this will be the plan to be the smallest stadium in baseball with a weird roof that will probably never exist anyway. So to have that idea that this is the grandest stadium that will ever exist, or the most important one since the huge sea change in stadium design that the Orioles did in the early 90s, is ridiculous. He went on to say, Kaval compared the A's potential move from Oakland to Las Vegas. He compared that to the Dodgers moving from Brooklyn to Los Angeles.
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely in the same realm, no doubt.
Which was it was a revolution for baseball, which only existed on the east of the Mississippi River due to travel issues, and the West Coast was not all that developed at that point in the mid 50s.
Good God.
It was such a sea change in all of professional sports when the Dodgers actually moved out there with your Giants from New York. It changed the landscape of baseball immensely. It was only, driven by transportation revolutions like the jet age that didn't exist before. It was so teams could actually travel out there and have a schedule. To compare the A's moving from Oakland to Las Vegas as a sea change to that level is absurd. I like the examples of the Dodgers, Kaval says. Our relocation is most similar to the Dodgers move out of Brooklyn. And that gets back to his idea that he's just got delusions of grandeur that don't exist. And he's just selling this shit as hard as he can. He can't possibly believe what he's saying. That's the MO of most used car salesmen, which I think is just a perfect way to characterize David Kaval. The national spotlight didn't end there. There's an article written in CBS Sports about how John Fisher has dropped the ball. The relocation plan is not going smoothly. Fisher has yet to come up with his end of the financing, which we got to a little bit last week, where he needs to sell the Oakland Coliseum to get his portion, which would be $150 million, I believe, to actually start to be able to finance this stadium that is apparently out there that potentially will not exist. The team has missed multiple deadlines to release stadium renderings, which those renderings we went over last week that just came out. They were supposed to be back in December, but for whatever reason, they couldn't get their shit together to actually release those. They did finally, but those were multiple deadlines they had missed at that point. And we don't even know where the A's will play from 2025 to 2027.
that's the best part
and beyond.
Yeah.
Beyond that, good God, the A's lost 112 games last year. I think they're going to lose more. I mean, we're good to our Nostradamus predictions, but can they even win 50 games next year? I don't see it. I don't see why. Again, I think there's going to be more fans protesting outside in their parking lot at games than actually attend these games. What kind of atmosphere that's going to be. They've slashed payroll below $60 million. This is going to be another contentious point in the new CBA that's coming in for 2027. There's got to be a floor.
There has to be a floor.
If we're going to have a de facto salary cap and the luxury tax, competitive balance tax, there's got to be a floor of some sort for many organizations to be over $200 million in spending, and the A's being allowed to spend less than $60 million is pathetic.
I also think they should, I don't know if they can do this. It should be a sliding floor based on what type of market you're in.
Yeah.
You can put that. To force someone like a Reinsdorf to have to spend, and even I mean, Ricketts is spending okay. They could spend more, but like force them to hold it at a minimum. So I don't know. That's just
I would mark this down as a bullet point for your platform in your campaign to become commissioner in 2029.
That's right. So. That's a serious platform, not rolling back the clock. I was joking around about. This is a serious.
I don't know if your owners are going to be. Yeah, I don't know if your constituency is going to be as receptive to that as the owners probably wouldn't like the idea of a floor. Hence, we don't have that yet, but we'll see how that pans out. We'll workshop that platform for you over the next several years. But the saddest part, well, it's hard to characterize what it could be the most sad thing with the A's organization is they also have the worst farm system in baseball by almost everyone's measure. And that has never been the case.
Nope.
At least in the last 25 years. At least they had the farm system to lean on. If they chose not to spend money, they could bring up some of the best talent in baseball to supplement that roster and remain competitive. But not only are they slashing payroll and refusing to field a major league club, they don't have the prospects to replenish that in the future, in the present or the future. So the situation is so dire, and it's simply because John Fisher has chosen to let his franchise erode and fall into decay just to be able to move it to another city and sell them the same bullshit.
You know what's crazy about that type of plan is it always backfires. And if I'm looking at it from Las Vegas's point of view, why do I want this team?
It's like such a negative. Yeah.
The way the owners run it and run it into the ground to manipulate a move. Well, what's to say when he's tired of, if he's still in control, when he's tired of Vegas, that he doesn't do the same thing again? Like, I don't want this guy in my town.
Yeah. They have diminished their own brand to such levels where I think that's very plausible. And that might be some of the blowback and why this move to Vegas, why Vegas might not be all that receptive to receiving such a shitty franchise. Like why would anyone want to be excited about that coming to their city?
Yeah, I would.
Actually, Maury Brown brought this up to David Cavall directly, who seems completely oblivious to how his brand is perceived. He thinks they're the Dodgers. He said, you've stated that you're not interested in rebranding the team when you move to Vegas. They're going to be the Athletics. They're going to be the A's. They're going to be in green and gold. But he's like, why wouldn't you consider that, you might need a brand new team name to get a fresh start, like to get what this decay and this stench you've created. You might want to consider a brand new team name, new colors. There's so much you could do with Las Vegas for branding. They're not interested because they think their brand is so solid. That's how delusional they really are. That's the delusions of grandeur that Forbes is getting at. So it's going to get worse before it gets better. And fortunately, as we've seen and we talked about last week, the fans in Oakland are standing up to him. The facade that the A's are putting out there is crumbling. I'm actually kind of really excited to see what happens in Oakland this year as this season starts. I want to see what those protests look like. I want to support them from 2,000 miles away, however we can. So, in a grotesque way, I'm actually looking forward to this season starting in Oakland, what it's going to actually look like.
We're here.
Kind of like a car crash.
Yeah, we're going to...
Gapers block.
We're going to figure out a way to protest locally. So I know there's some,
you and I need to talk about that some more.
There's some interest there.
Yeah. So. We reached out to the documentarians that are making Summer of Cell. They seemed a little bit receptive to our, whatever you call it. I reached out to them just to tell them we support them. I don't know what we can really do from here, but I think they appreciated that people in Chicago and Detroit are on their side at least. They definitely want to make this a nationwide movement against the A's brass. Well, that's all I've got for this week, unless you had anything else you wanted to talk about.
No, and there's no Dylan Cease news to report before we get off
Nothing?
the air. No.
I was sure your watch would be buzzing at some point during the show, but
no, it's I've been refreshing the browser on another tab, and it's just all the same stories we've heard. So maybe later.
This is the earliest we've recorded a podcast in some time. So I should be able to get 1 o'clock here. I should be able to get this out by late afternoon. So maybe we'll see if anything changes between now and then. But you can find that podcast anywhere you'd like to find a podcast. You can get to all of our platforms at the new MajorLeagueAholes.com or SoxTypeThing.com. You can get to our latest videos. You can easily get to our YouTube channel through that. YouTube channel's blowing up. Appreciate everyone out there watching these segments or watching a lot of people watch the entire podcast instead of our chopped up segments. Yeah, I was impressed with that. We've almost got 50% more subscribers in the last 2 weeks than we've had in the 3 years we've had the YouTube channel. So that is definitely blowing up. Appreciate everyone subscribing. But I think with that, we might as well declare this podcast is over. Peace.
Peace.
Word Hole Media.